Ladies and gentlemen, I am honored beyond words to welcome a dear, dear person to the Center One Therapy podcast, Rabbi Ephraim Benmordechai. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I am truly humbled to be here. It means a lot to me, and especially being in the same room with my very spiritual cousin.
I love the word that you used, spiritual, because we'll definitely talk about this today.
Okay.
But it's actually my honor to be here with you also, and to call you my cousin. You know, I usually keep my guests who I invite on the show under wrap. Like, I don't tell anybody. I keep it secret until the episode airs. For you particularly, I told a few people, and when I told them, their face lit up.
Really?
And they're like, I can't believe you got him. How did you get him to come on your podcast? And they said, they're like, you got a good one. And I was just listening to everything that they were telling me. They're like, he has so much wisdom to share from so many aspects of life. For the few people who may not know your background, and I wrote this down to make sure I don't miss one, but I'm sure I probably did. You, number one, the reason why we're here today is, first of all, the topic that we're going to be discussing is making tough choices and understanding the decisions behind school doors. What am I talking about? Your background is you are currently a menahel, a school principal. You are also a teacher for many years, a rabbi of a congregation, a mentor, a spiritual leader. I know you do a lot of couples work as well. I can almost say that coaching, many different areas of a person's life. You've been in connection with people who may be struggling from a spiritual angle, correct? And I think, most important, you're also a dad. You're also a father.
Yeah, indeed.
And the reason why I kind of left best for last is because today we're not only talking about your role as a profession, what you do for work, but we're also talking about it from an angle that it's so personal to you. You also have children in school, and you have, at this point, I mean, Baruch Hashem, thank God, you have children from all ages, and you were able to marry off children as well. So you're, I can say, very well-rounded in terms of child development in all aspects of life. So what are your thoughts, first of all, about being a principal? Let's talk about that. What does it feel like to be a principal of a school?
Okay. First, I want to say thank you for inviting me and giving me this opportunity. Once again, I am humbled. I don't deserve such an introduction. And yet I appreciate that you view me this way, and other people obviously as well. And thank you once again for inviting me here. I also want to tell you that whatever I'm going to be saying today is not Torah Sinai. It's not Torah from Sinai. That means people are, they have their own opinion. And this is just a discussion that we're going to have. And obviously, I agreed to this because if this can help people, I'm all about helping other people, and at least I try to. And I was hesitant in the beginning to come and go viral, but I started thinking perhaps there can be some individuals that can get inspired, and I could help. Obviously, everything I have, I would like to thank the one above. Hashem has granted us the gifts that we have. Each and every one of us have their gifts, and everything I have is due to Him. So, with that said, once again, I want to thank you. I also want to clarify that the words that I'm going to be saying is my own personal opinions, suggestions that I personally came across, my life experiences, and people have different opinions, and they are more than welcome to disagree. So,
the reason why I asked you, I asked you multiple times because I know This is not something you typically do, and to get you here, I know you made so many accommodations to be here. It's also because I saw your work and I saw your delivery. And as a therapist, I'm always very careful. Typically, the people that I interview here are therapists with a mental health background. And today I decided to do something different because oftentimes when working with children or parents in my practice, a lot of the times things come up that have to do with school, have to do with the teacher, that have to do with the principal. A lot of the times, even working with adults, the resentment they hold towards a teacher or a school, they had a relationship with school that possibly disappointed them, or even a negative relationship with religion or spirituality. But then when I saw your work and how you deliver a message and how sweet and beautiful it actually can be, I said, wow, we kind of need to bring this to people to actually maybe spark up their connection, whether it's with a higher power, maybe also with, which is Hashem, which is God, maybe also seeing religion in a different light. Because the way that you were able to bring it up, and we're going to talk about that more today, is meeting a person where they're at. A lot of the times, unfortunately, people feel this pressure, this intense pressure of being something better and greater. Now, as a principal, which is a huge title to carry, tell us a little bit about what it feels like being a principal.
I started off as a sixth grade Rebbe. I was teaching sixth grade boys. It is a passion of mine to teach boys. Obviously, when you're teaching, you're growing yourself. You're becoming a better individual. You are connecting with different types of personalities, and you're always constantly thinking of ways how to connect to them, how to inspire them, and through them you get inspired yourself. So I started off as being a sixth grade Rebbe, a teacher. And I was never dreaming of being a principal. As a matter of fact, I remember, and it's unbelievable how we have to watch our words. Two things in my life I said, and I clearly remember saying, like, I would never want to do that. And one of them was, I would never want to be a principal. I'm thinking, who would ever want to be a principal? I remember these words, who would ever want to be a principal? And, man plans, God laughs. And he's like, you will, So, yeah, it just, I don't know, it came to me. This is something that I was not yearning to become. I was never, thinking that I will ever be a principal. But it came time. I guess this is something that I guess divine, that revelation, and I have to do it, and when the right time came, I had to kind of I had to jump on the wagon. This was an opportunity that I probably could not resist, and I took it. So how does it feel to be a principal? It is, first of all, a privilege. It is a tremendous privilege to be able to serve your people and help your people, especially if you're capable, especially if you think you're capable. So I look at it this way. If I'm able to help children, young children, to develop to become adults, successful adults, wholesome individuals, this is my biggest pleasure, to be able to see an individual who was a young boy and didn't have the skills, didn't have the tools, and all of a sudden he went through your hands, and you were able to ignite and inspire someone. And because of what you did for this person while he was a little child, and now he became a very respected, and I like the word wholesome. So you're probably going to hear this word a lot from me. Individual, a complete person, that makes me very, very happy. So in terms of the positive aspect of being a principal, you are, if you love to serve and you like to help, this is definitely This is something that I appreciate and I enjoy doing. Obviously, because of this big role comes a lot of responsibilities. Um, there's not a I don't want to lie. I don't want to be dishonest and say, I pray every day but thoughts like that come through my mind every day. At least, like I hope I will not make a mistake. It's a tremendous responsibility because you're dealing with so many different types of people. You're dealing with children, different personalities of children. You're dealing with parents, different personalities of parents. You're dealing with teachers. You're dealing with admins and different people that are working with you, your peers that are in the same field with you, and being able to juggle all that and yet come up with a beautiful product in the end, good results. It's challenging. So you definitely need siyata dishmaya. You need help from heaven on a daily basis. You need help to be able to do your job properly. So there's a lot to take in, a lot to work with. Very challenging, but I take it one day at a time, and every day is a different experience that you grow through.
So beautifully said, and I agree with you. You got into this role because that's part of your nature. You want to do good. You want to help. You want to be there for these children. And it feels so good. The payoff is so nice whenever these children end up becoming somebody great. It feels so good. But being a principal of a school, there's no way that you can do that for all the children, and therefore you have teachers, right? So I can imagine one of your roles as a principal is to hire teachers. So what qualities do you look for in a teacher during an interview where you say, this would be a good fit for the students? So
that's a good question. It's a good question. And once again, I'm going to repeat myself again. This is my personal experience. I personally think that a candidate that comes in through the door has to look like an individual that can be a good role model. Can he be a good role model for the student? I look at everything. I look at the way he dresses. I look at the way he speaks, the way he looks. But mostly I look at how much he loves the Talmidim. He loves the students. He loves children. This is very, very important. If a person comes in there because he's just looking for a job, I don't think being in the field of education is the right place for him. And I think once they said, why is it that when it comes to educators, they don't get paid as doctors? I think, to be honest, I think educators should be able to get paid like doctors, because if you have great educators, you will not need doctors. It's because, unfortunately, you don't have the best salaries, like doctor salaries for the rebbeim, for teachers and educators. That's why you unfortunately end up with going to being in the office of a doctor, the hospitals and whatever. But when I heard once an interesting thing. Why is it like that? Why don't they pay educators top dollar like a doctor? And the answer is because you probably have wrong people being in this field. Because people will go for the fact that it pays well. So when you have people coming through those doors and they know where they're getting themselves into, they know the salary, they know the bracket, and yet they still decide to be there, that means most probably they're the right people, because they're not looking to make to have that mansion and to be luxurious. They really want to help the Talmidim and the students, and they're there for right reasons. So just to sum up, I am looking for, obviously, an individual that could be a great role model for a student, and an individual that loves students, loves Talmidim. Also a person that I feel is an open-minded individual, a person that wants to grow. if a person comes in and thinks he knows it all, and sometimes it's difficult because you have to deal with some individuals that have many years of experience. So in a way, it's like a double-edged sword, because if you get an unexperienced teacher, or a person that's like a rookie, he's just starting out, a lot of times what happens is that you need to train him, and it takes time. And he is unexperienced. He comes into a classroom, and sometimes, it takes time for him to develop into becoming a great educator, especially if he has the desire to. I don't know if you have that time. Sometimes it wouldn't be fair to have students in the classroom of a teacher that doesn't really have experience and needs to go through that. And you don't want to have the students to be the guinea pigs and to be trained on. On the other hand, you have a teacher that has many years of experience, and the saying goes, you can't teach an old horse or dog to new tricks.
You can't teach an old dog new tricks.
Yeah, so the same thing over here. When you have a person that's not an open-minded individual, very hard to work with someone like that. So generally, I like to work with people that are open-minded, people that want to grow, want to become better, and even if they have many years of background in education, they still want to listen to you. And I came across people that are much older than me, and yet they were able to listen to what I had to say. Not that I'm anything special, but I'm saying whatever I said, and they implemented, and all of a sudden they saw how it really impacted their classroom, and their experience they got so much better in this aspect. It's rewarding. It's rewarding.
It sounds like a flexible mindset is one of the key ingredients that you're looking for in a teacher, which would actually make a lot of sense because you're also dealing with so many personalities in a classroom.
Correct.
So when you have, let's say, in a classroom, 20 students, I understand that teachers often teach to the group, but also we have to remember that every single child is its own separate world. And we also have to remember that we're teaching to the individual.
100%. This is actually one of the things I wanted to speak about today. It is unfortunate, at least I can say that we live in a time today where I think the education system can change or get better, and it is getting better. And I will explain what I mean. Today, everybody speaks about this, student-centered learning. Student-centered. It became a big thing where you have a classroom of 20 or 25 students, and obviously in a classroom like that, you have 3 to 4 levels, maybe even more sometimes. And how do you target every student? It used to be the way that we grew up with was sage on the stage. You have a person just preaching, and students had to just focus on one skill, and that is the listening skill. If you know how to listen very well, great. If not, you're in trouble. Today, as time goes by, people started to realize that, we need to change from the regular model, and from just being a sage on the stage, you have to be a guide on the side.
I love that.
Yeah. It's a famous quote, sages on stage or guide on the side, which means to facilitate learning. In Hebrew, there is no, in Lashon HaKodesh, there is no word teacher. There is a word melamed. The word melamed does not mean teacher. It means the one that brings out learning. Melamed, the one that brings out learning. Or more is not a teacher. More is more derech, the one that shows you the way. His job is to facilitate. He's supposed to show you, and you're supposed to go. He gives you the tools, and you're supposed to yourself use those tools to enhance learning, to have learning take place. So today, it is much different. I think the world is changing, and the world understands that we need to connect to the individual. And it is unfortunate. Sometimes you're in a situation where you have a big school and you have a big classroom. I think it's not in particular to one building or one school. This is the way it is in every single school, where it's too big, and generally you have to there has to be some law and order. When you have something that's grandiose the way it is, there has to be some formal law and order to everyone, for everyone to follow, in order for you to control the mass to a certain extent. I don't want to say the word control, doesn't sound good, but I'm saying to be able to run an efficient, school or program, because it's just big. You can't have different laws and different rules for everybody. Then you're not going to have a school. On the other hand, so as an educator and as a principal, a person has to know these two different worlds. There's a world of having everyone follow one, rule, one derech, and comply to one system, because this is what you have to do when it comes to running a big operation. But there's also the world of an individual, a yachid. There's yachid verabim, There's a yachid, an individual, and a rebbe and an educator has to know that I have to deal with him as an individual. That's the role of a great educator, my personal opinion, or a great leader, to be able to identify and to be able to tap into that individual person and know who needs that individual approach. Obviously, everyone needs it, but some people need it more than others, and you have to know which ones need it more than others. And if you're able to do that, holding the school as a one unit with one rule, more or less, and yet targeting the individuals, that I think is masterful.
For sure. It definitely sounds like there's so much balancing that has to happen there.
Absolutely.
And based on what you said before, I agree with you that this is such an underappreciated job, because you have to know the content, the education, to actually be able to teach, but also it's an art form to be able to kind of juggle everything that's going on. Yes, you have to cater to the whole, but also be very in tune with every single individual, doing that all at the same time. And it's definitely a challenge. And I can see how, sometimes I speak with my clients and I say to them, how was your day today? And they say, I have on my wall, I have a picture frame, and there's a lot of different chairs there. And it's with different emotions. And it says there, what chair are you sitting in today? And I would ask my client, what chair are you sitting in today? And they would say, I'm sitting in the sad chair, or disappointed, or the meh chair, right? And I would say, well, what got you into this chair? They said, I had a really hard day. My teacher yelled at me, and I feel like my teacher hates me. And we talk about that. We explore that. And a part of me is like, oh, man, I wish this teacher would just know what's going on in this child's life. On the flip side, I can also empathize with the teacher really just trying to juggle it all. And I say this coming from a very sensitive place. I actually had an opportunity, and I don't know how many people can say this. I had an opportunity to teach all grades, starting from pre-1A all the way through college level. I was able to I was given the opportunity to teach all grades of high school, all grades of elementary school, middle school, and I was a professor. So I was able to kind of see students in different areas in their life and in their developmental stages. And I see what goes on in school. I see what happens where you're trying to juggle everything, but at the same time, in my opinion, I would love to hear what your thoughts are, it's so important to also understand kind of what's going on at home. So how do you bridge that gap? How are teachers aware of a child going through, their parents going through a divorce, or somebody passed away, or there's a move, or there's mental health issues going on?
So, good question. It is our responsibility as the principals of the school, obviously, to be able to meet with the teachers and tell them way in advance, before the school year begins, if you know anything about the student, you have a class list, and you sit with the teacher, and you tell them, this student, you have to be a little careful with him. He's going through this and this situation. He needs help. He needs a different approach. And it's very, very helpful to have those meetings with the teachers. I found it to be very helpful. There are some that say, I don't want to know. I want to be able to explore myself and be able to, because sometimes when teachers know that in advance, sometimes they in their mind, naturally you start kind of like putting
A label.
a label on the student, and therefore you will not be able to bring out the potential of that student. So some refrain themselves from trying to know. Some actually want to know because they don't want to have to, chas v'shalom, God forbid, get into a situation where they mess up with the student and then they shut him down, shut his world off. You know what I mean? They don't want to have to do that. So yeah, it is our responsibility to be able to know what's going on. Which we try. I have another a coworker who I work with, another principal in the school, who, Baruch Hashem, we try to build a relationship together and work on this situation where we try to know everything about the family, the student, prior to the school year, so that we could tell the teacher and the Rebbe that this is what's going on, and just he needs a different approach.
This conversation that we're having right now is actually a very hot topic, because before we started, I actually posted a question on social media and said, what changes would you like to see in the school system? What are your thoughts about the school system? Share with us some of your opinions about it. And the comments were flooding in. And it was so interesting to see from many of the comments that I was reading, it looked like many people were in a place of pain. Many parents had a lot of questions. They had a lot of even disappointment that they experienced. And today I would like to show some of the parents a flip side to the scenario that they might have experienced. So, for example, a child comes to you with the parents for an interview to be a potential student in the school. And for some reason, you have to reject this child. Now, parents might think, what's wrong with them? What's wrong with us? Why weren't we accepted? And it's almost like they feel like the administration doesn't care. What are your thoughts about that?
I could definitely identify myself to this situation. As a little boy, I went through it myself. I was a little boy, and my parents wanted to get me into a yeshiva when I was 9 years old. I was in one yeshiva. Then my parents wanted another yeshiva, or maybe 8 years old. And I wasn't good enough for, that place. And as a little boy, my mother, I remember, was very upset. And she was very, very disappointed. And as a little boy, I felt like, am I not good enough? It's interesting that if this person would realize that I'm a principal of a school today, I don't want to boast. It's not my thing, but I'm just saying.
Maybe that's why you became a principal. Right, I'll show him.
No, but I mean, it's interesting. Just you never know. It could end up with a person. I always say this, and that's what makes me be a little bit cautious. Before you decline a candidate, I think twice. I always remember this story with me, and therefore, obviously, you have to measure every single step carefully. So I do understand where the parents are coming from. Totally understand. It's a natural instinct. It's a natural feeling for a person. Every person has a certain level of dignity, and when he comes to a place and he's declined and they don't want him, you start feeling rejected and kind of you don't want to be there. You don't want to be in a place like that. So I totally understand them. This is coming from their perspective, and I sympathize with them. Nevertheless, I do want to say that when I was a Rebbe in the classroom, I was an educator in a classroom. I looked at my classroom as my school, and I didn't connect my classroom to the entire school. I felt this is my school, this is my class, this is my school, and there's certain things that I did. Now I look at it as a principal from the chair of being an administrator. I realized that a lot of things I was doing as a teacher was a little bit selfish, because because I'm not seeing a bigger picture. And I see sometimes some educators, some teachers do that as well right now. And I understand where they're coming from, because they're not sitting on my chair, behind the desk, to be able to see the entire picture. They're not connecting all the classes together, all the parents, all the teachers, all the staff, and as a big puzzle. They're only looking at their puzzle, at their piece, and they think that this is the only piece in the puzzle. Mm-hmm. This is the same thing when it comes to parents. When parents come into a school, they are looking at themselves as one family coming into a school. Is obviously very difficult for them to be able to see the entire operation, because they're not in our shoes. So now, as a principal, when I became a principal, I started looking at my situation in the classroom and said, wow, how selfish was I? It was like, this is what I was doing. And when the teachers are doing it to me, now I understand where they're coming from. On the other hand, they don't understand me. And now I understand the principal that was prior to me. Now I understand where he was coming from. And I'm like, wow. So, and it's a game changer. Like, you look at it from a different lens, you're like, wow, I was so blind. So the same thing over here. When you have parents, when they are coming in as a family, it is very difficult for them to see the other angle. But when they're coming as part of the administration, they're part of the school, and they see what's going on. We actually had some parents that actually became these employees in the yeshiva. And it's interesting how when they were parents, they spoke differently. As they became employees, they're like, whoa, we stand up for you. We applaud you. We actually had a parent that was off. One day he had some background in teaching. So he's not an educator by trade. So one day we needed a sub. So we decided, to call him as a sub to the classroom. He came in. He wasn't able to be there for an hour. He wasn't able to even open his mouth. It wasn't easy for him. After the class, he came over to us and he said, I have to put a red carpet. Every time you come in, I have to stand up for you. And I don't mean me. I mean any educator. So when a parent actually becomes an educator or comes into the school and he's with us throughout the hours of the school day, and they see what really goes on in the school, they realize, whoa, there's so much that we don't know. I could share with you stories, so many stories that will shed light to understand what's really going on. Like, if I was a parent now as an educator, I would probably do the same. It is very hard. It's very, very difficult. And sometimes you're being misjudged. And sometimes people speak about you, against you. And this is part of the job. I saw a beautiful quote, trying to remember. If you want to lead the orchestra, you have to turn your back to the crowd.
Wow. I love that.
If you want to lead the orchestra, you have to turn your back to the crowd, which means, unfortunately, sometimes you want to have a beautiful orchestra and symphony. You have to turn your back to the crowd. And yeah, you will have people that will not be happy. Unfortunately, this happens to be the negative aspect of the job. But you have to be considerate to the people, but you also have to understand that they don't see what's going on in the school. We had a situation once where we had one employee, one educator, wasn't complying. To the parents, this person was unbelievable. Wow, what an educator. And unfortunately, we have spoken to the person. We have evidence, clear evidence. In the beginning, we didn't have clear evidence, so we weren't sure, kind of like, how can we do this? How can the verdict be ABC when we're not really sure? We think, but then, we found out 100% this is it, and the person admitted. How in the world are you supposed to keep him in the school when the parents think this individual is amazing, but for the students, he's not amazing? If the parents will know what really is going on, and they will understand why the verdict of the school had to be this way. Not only they'll understand it, they'll say thank you.
Right.
Why? Because I always say that I tell parents, we are the eyes. We are your eyes. We're your messengers. We're the messengers of the parents. The parents are at work the entire day. They don't see what's going on in the school. We're taking full responsibility for the child. And chas v'shalom, God forbid, if there's anything that's happening with the child, the first ones to be blamed is us. Because we're taking responsibility. And I'm sure parents understand that it's a responsibility, liability that we take upon ourselves. Because why? We are the eyes of the parents. We're taking the same responsibility as the parents are taking. And if anything goes wrong, we are to blame. So if we see something wrong, if an educator does something wrong, it is our responsibility to report it. It is our responsibility to close the case and take care of it. Now, parents might not know. To the parents, oh, this person is unbelievable. But if the parent would be in our shoes, they would say, wow, I applaud you. Just like that parent that came in to be to be a teacher one day. He understood what's going on. It's not easy. And this is actually one of the things I would love to implement. And that is sometimes, when the parents have an off day, just want to make like a parent and teacher, like some type of a association where I could have the parents come in and give a class, educate, teach. Maybe they will be able to, realize that they have something in them that they haven't realized before. And you never know. If they come and they'll give a class, they'll probably have a different understanding of what it means to be in the classroom.
Yeah, definitely. And a lot of the times in situations like this where there's so many questions, to create a channel of communication, I actually really liked that you said, and it made me feel good. Like, if, for example, if my child would be in your school, I would feel really comfortable knowing that you take on so much responsibility and you have that sense of awareness that we are the eyes and ears. We take full responsibility for whatever happens to these to these children. Now, in a situation where kids oftentimes in class, this is something that comes up a lot, suspension, right? Where kids are suspended. And then you have, this is the big topic, a child is suspended, so he comes home, and then the parents say, what lesson does this teach him? He's home, he's sitting on the couch, he's either watching something on TV or on electronics or doing nothing and playing and having a good time. What role does this play in him improving himself?
Definitely a question that a parent would want to say and ask. Obviously, once again, it's coming from an angle of looking at it from the parent's perspective. Obviously, for a parent, he doesn't want his child to be at home. Yes, because he's going to be sitting there and not doing anything. So I will tell you like this: it's a sensitive topic, and I will not tell you that I am happy to suspend a student. And I believe strongly that this should be used, only in the last case scenario, in a situation where you really, you tried everything. And that's what I try to do. I try everything. I make a full circle with a student before we have to ask him to, be suspended. And the truth is, suspension should be used only in a situation, again, my humble opinion, only in a situation where you tried everything and it didn't work. You got the parents involved and you feel like you have to put your foot down. As much as the parents think that it doesn't work, it does work. Because we see it in the school that when the child, obviously, yes, when the child goes home and he plays and he thinks, oh, it's a day off, psychologically in the back of the child's mind, he knows that he did something wrong. A child, when it's a day off for everybody, he loves it because everybody's off. But when he knows that everybody's in school and he's not in school because the school decided he can't be in school when everybody is in school, it makes an impact on the child. And he feels bad about it. He doesn't want to be home. Even if he sounds like he loves it and he plays the game, and beautiful. Psychologically, he doesn't want to be home. He wants to be in school. So to a certain extent, obviously we try not to. We try our best to do anything and everything not to suspend. But sometimes you have to show the child that this is a serious thing. It's important and you have to stay home. And obviously it also has to be with love. Student has to know you love them. Every student has to know you love them and you mean for their benefit. I'll give you an example. Once it happened with me, and I always try to take life examples to reflect on them and to learn from them. Once I got pulled over by a cop, and a mean cop, the only thing he says is license registration. And you're trying to explain, officer, it's that license registration. He doesn't want to hear you. You give him your license registration. After a couple of minutes, he comes back and he gives you a ticket. You're upset. You're so angry, right? And then once there was a situation, I got pulled over by a cop, and such a nice cop. He looks at you. Hi, hello, how are you? Can I please have your license registration? And you're trying to explain. I totally understand. I'm so sorry. Just give me your license. I'll see what I could do. He sits in the car. He's there. A couple minutes later, he gives you the ticket. He's like, you know what you could do? In the back of the ticket, you could fill out this and this and this, and you could he gives you direction of what to do, but he still gives you the ticket. You end up paying for it. You know what happens in the end when you close the window? Thank you, officer. That's what you tell them when you drive off. And I was thinking to myself, why? Two people, both cops gave you a ticket. The answer is because the cop that gave you a ticket and he was nice about it, you felt from him that he has to do his job. It's unfortunate that you got a ticket. I'm not happy of doing it, but this is, same thing. If obviously I don't want to compare the situation with the cop and the situation in the school. It's a small analogy, but it's very similar to a certain extent. When a student feels that you're sincere and you love the student and you care about the student and you don't want to do this, it's like a parent that unfortunately has to give a shot to his child, right? The child is crying. You don't want to do it, but a child understands that you love him. He's not going to hate you. He knows you love him. You are correct. And those parents that are upset, I understand why they're upset. If an administrator shows that he doesn't care and he's just being very cold and rude and doesn't want to hear the parents, doesn't want to hear anything, and doesn't work with the student and doesn't show sympathy, empathy to the student and just suspends the student, I understand the feeling. And yes, I don't agree with such suspension. And I personally would not like it myself, and I would not want to do it. Another aspect of it is that if you do suspend, I think it's very important that a Rebbe, a student, a teacher has to come up with some sort of work for a student, a plan for him to be able to be out of school, but yet do the work that's required in school. That way, he's still working, he's still part of the school, we still love him, but right now he needs to have a little time out, to do his work, but not in school. And when he comes back, we love him, we're going to accept him and embrace him and have a meeting with him and explain to him, do you know why you got suspended? Hopefully, let's not do it again. That way, I feel like if he's going to feel like you love him and you care about him and you mean for his own best, what's going to happen is, I think, overall, he'll accept it, and most probably, he will not do it again.
This is a very sensitive topic because I agree with what you said in the beginning where you have to run a system. That's what you're running. You're running a system. You're running a whole production, and it has to run as smooth as possible because there's so much traffic happening there with teachers and students and parents and other professionals that are there. But at the same time, when taking into consideration mental health issues, whether it's difficulties with impulse control, whether it's ADHD, opposition defiant disorder, children have a very hard time containing themselves, and then to send them home, do you give some homework to the parents to say, look, your child is going to be home for these couple of days. This is the things that I would like you to work on with your child, or...
Every case is different, obviously. Depends on the case. Obviously, the best case scenario would be for us to do that. Yes, we try. I definitely try my best to connect the teacher with the parent and tell them, this child has to be home now because of ABC. He has to have a program at home so that he will, and the parents have to have some sort of a program for him in order for him to be able to at least get something at home while being at home and not being in school. Mm-hmm. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, but when we're talking about mental health issues, for example, ADHD, right? A lot of the times, And I'm only sharing this because when I was a teacher in school, they didn't really teach us the background of mental health issues, right? I'm talking about when I was in education. When I became a therapist, it was a completely different ballgame. And I think I shared this in the past, but I'll share this again. I was a teacher. I'm not going to share a lot of information just because I wanted to protect the privacy of the student. I was a teacher, and I gave the students a test. And they were supposed to grade the test, come back the next day. They were supposed to take the test, come back the next day with a signed paper with their mark. So I gave out the tests. The next day, there was one of the students who failed, and he had to sign it. So this way his parents know kind of what's going on. He came the next day, and I said to him, as I was checking the homework, I said, "Where's that signed test?" And he said, "I didn't sign it." I said, "Why?" He said, "Because I know my father would hang me." I said, "Come on. You really think your dad would hang you?" He said, "Yeah, he would make me put on a sweater and take my hood and actually hang me on the wall." And I said, "Come on, you really think he would do that?" He said, "Yeah, he did it to my sister. And depending on how severe the thing we did was, that's how long we would have to stay on the wall." And this was like way over my head, right? I was a teacher. I didn't really have the experience as a therapist. Mm-hmm. I told the principal this case. I told him what happened. And at that moment, there was a switch in my mind. I said, I want to be able to connect with a child in such a way to be able to help them throughout that issue that they're dealing with. And I felt very limited being in the classroom because I agree with what you said. In school, we have to wear a hat as the administrator, as the teacher, and be focused, but also keep in mind that this child is a person. School is just one component of this child's life. There are so many other things this child is dealing with. And unfortunately, and I hope, based on hearing how you're sharing and how you run your school, I hope in many schools they implement this mental health piece, being more in tune with what's going on with a child as a whole. Now, unfortunately, not all the time do you see these cases. So when you have a child, and somebody commented this actually, they said, because a child is not going to act like a good little soldier, they get in trouble, right? So how do we navigate that? To understand that this is not a child who's trying to do bad behavior. This is a child who has a hard time controlling their impulses. So if I love for all my students to sit down, but this child, for their brain development, for the way their brain works, they need to walk around, or they need to have a fidget in their hand, or they need to be able to do something. How does that work?
So it's a good question. Good question. What I will say is that Baruch Hashem, thank God today, mental health is becoming, there's an awareness today. And the reason why I say today is because I see the difference between 6 years ago when I became the manal of the school, and now I see a drastic change in the awareness of mental health and in the support that is given for mental health. We support students that have mental health issues and they need help. And Baruch Hashem, we have a lot of therapists in the school who are there to support that aspect of the school. And part of supporting is that we do give training when we have professional development in the summertime. As a matter of fact, we're going to have one soon in February, in a couple of weeks. Also professional development. Some parents don't like it, As a matter of fact, parents reached out and they said, why are you keeping the kids home when it's a regular day of school? But not realizing that it's professional development. This is the time that we take to speak about social emotional learning. Like, for example, this year we implemented SEL, social emotional learning, from the Torah lens. We're actually implementing this right. Like we started the training, and this is after winter break coming back, where we have an amazing program called, it's called Treasure Hunt. It has to do with social emotional learning, where it's going to train the teacher and the student. Treasure Hunt is the treasure that's within you, and we have to teach the child to hunt and to see the treasure within him. We're very much in tune the social emotional aspect of mental health, because as educators we do see the fallouts. We do see the fallouts, and yes, maybe 20 years ago or 30 years ago, throwing out a kid or even spanking a kid, or I'm talking about like even parents, it would be acceptable. As a matter of fact, there's certain schools till recently would use their hands to be able to educate their child. I don't know if the word educate would be the correct way,
Discipline.
but discipline the child. But now we realize that it doesn't work. It doesn't work. You need a different approach, and you understand, since the awareness of mental health became so widely accepted, we understand that there are different methodologies and different ways of working with a student that needs help. And therefore, because the awareness is so great, we're learning about it. Thank God, in the Jewish communities, there are so many different professional development courses and classes on mental health, which when you learn about it, you're like, wow, now I understand why this child acts this way, and therefore let me implement or let me learn about it. So the awareness is much, much better, and therefore, since the awareness to the educators and the principals is evident, so what we do is we get the training and we give the professional development on it. And Baruch Hashem, obviously it's a work in progress, and every single day you grow and you're implementing new things, because I'm very big on, I try my best to grow myself. An educator has to grow himself on a daily basis, to try to become better and to try to see other aspects and how he could become better educator and how he could impact the students around him. So if a person is a growth mindset type of individual, he constantly grows and he's constantly in tune and aware of what's going on around him. So he's always growing, and he wants to teach others to grow as well. So when you have such an environment in the school, then the entire school becomes different, dynamics. The entire environment of the school becomes, different, since you're in tune and you're able to give proper education to your staff. It's more or less, I would say, Baruch Hashem, we have got much better feedback and better in this mental health issue.
It seems like the common denominator since the beginning of, as you were speaking, is openness. You're looking for an educator who's flexible, who's open, and willing to change, willing to grow, regardless of the amount of knowledge they know or their professional skills. But it's almost like you want you're looking for a teacher who's able to connect with students and be able to understand the background that they're dealing with.
Absolutely.
Now, this is a question that came up from one of the commenters on social media. Talking about good manners, there's this concept of, we pay so much money to the school, this should be the school's issue. They need to be teaching these skills, whether it's good manners, how to be a mensch, right? So what are your thoughts about where do parents, what role do they hold in this, and then where does the school come in?
So I will tell you like this. There are, again, many ways to tackle this question. I like this question. And I will tell you like this. One way I will tackle it is by saying that today, especially today, it's unfortunate that not everybody gets the training to be the right parent, to be a parent correctly, which means I think it's very important for us as parents. I'm speaking from my, parent side of me. We as parents have to grow ourselves as parents, to educate ourselves. How do I become a better parent? How do I connect with the school and become a partner with the school? I will tell you like this. It's a triangle. You have, the parents, you have the school, and you have the student. We need all three to be able to work together. You need obviously the school and the parents and the student in order for everything to work. And I will tell you like this: I feel that those parents that are in sync with the school, their child is unbelievable. He excels in every area in the school. When the parent is on the same page with the school, and I'm not just saying it as a theory, it's a fact. I'm so convinced to say that it's a fact. You have most of the time, you have parents that are in sync with the school. They comply with the school. They want to know what the school is. The school is not the enemy for the parent. We are your partners. And this is something that we have to, I guess there has to be more awareness to this, that we are partners. We want to partner up with the parent to be able to raise this beautiful neshama, this beautiful soul. We're partners. And so long, it's just, I believe, like a little twist in the mind, so long as the parent and the educator and the school knows that we're partners. So when you're partners in a business, what happens? We're partners no matter what. We stick through this together, and we're going to do whatever it takes to make this business grow. Same thing over here. If we're partners, we're going to stick to it together. We're partners. It's like marriage. To a certain extent, it's a marriage. If you have a successful marriage between a husband and wife, when they have shalom bayit between themselves, you have a wonderful, wholesome student or child, right? When the child grows up in a house where unfortunately the parents are not on the same page, it's very difficult. There are going to be fallouts. So I find personally that in order, this is again my personal experience, and this is experience that I'm seeing, that in order for the child to be successful in his development, the parents have to be on the same page with the school, and the school has to be on the same page with the parent. It has to, obviously, we have to understand the parents, and the parents have to understand the school. It's like, I'm thinking of an analogy. I was thinking today, it's like a cup, right? If you fill the cup and there's a hole in the bottom, so no matter how much you're going to fill the cup, everything is going to spill. So I feel like the filling aspect, I think, is like the school, right? The bottom of the cup is like the parents, right? So
the foundation.
The foundation. I mean, they're the ones that have to make sure that whatever is being taught in the school is not going to drip out or slip out or spill out. They have to preserve it. So it is our job as educators to educate the parents, to be on the same page with parents. As a matter of fact, what I started doing, and again, this is because I want to grow myself. I decided to give chinuch classes in the school to the parents, not only to the parents of the school, but parents that want to become better parents. I myself want to be a better parent. So I feel like if I will have a mirror image of myself where I'll be able to speak to the parents, I'm a parent as well, but I'll have somebody to speak to. I'm not going to be speaking to myself, right? People are going to think I'm crazy if I'm talking to myself. But if I have parents who I'm speaking with and I'm sharing with them the thoughts, my thoughts, and also the thoughts of the Torah and proper chinuch, we're educating the parents to be the parents that they need to be in order for them to have awareness. The more there's awareness, I believe, the more there is a unit between the parents and the school. And once there's a unit, you have a child that will develop to be a successful individual.
In a perfect world, that would make total sense, 100%. If the child feels that there's some sense of strength and connection between the parents and the school, and they're kind of speaking the same language. But at the same time, you want to align with your child too. You know, parents are also the number one advocates for their child. And unfortunately, sometimes certain things happen in a classroom, and I'm not talking about a specific school. I'm not singling any, I'm making a general statement, because I see clients from different schools, boys, girls, high school, elementary school, and sometimes certain things happen in the classroom that are questionable. So at what point do parents have to say, you know, I'm going to align with the school, or I have to really go with what my child is saying?
That is a very good question. At what point does the parent have to basically make a decision if he's with the school or or is with the child. I think it's very important from day one for the parent and the school to get connected as much as possible. The parent has to be involved. And I believe if there's a relationship from day one between the school and the parent, I don't think this question would be a question, because the parent will be able to already know where the school is standing, how sincere the school is, and they'll be able to understand if the school is coming from this angle or that angle. But you're right. If a parent does not have a relationship with the school, and all of a sudden and vice versa, if the school doesn't have a relationship with the parent, and out of the blue the school is calling the parent is going to start questioning the school, and like, what's going on over here? I don't really trust. Maybe my child is saying the truth. But if there is a relationship from the beginning, I think I think it's better for both, because the parents are able to. The school is able to see, we have those parents that are so involved and they so want to know what's going on and they're so in sync with the school. We want to be involved with them as well, and we want to be able to be proactive before the problem starts. We're going to start reaching out to the parents, say, hey, listen, and that's what we've done. We see that before the problem starts with the child, we reach out to the parent. We say, listen, let's have a meeting, and this is what we see, and let's see how we're able to help the situation before it becomes a problem. So those parents that are proactive and they want to help the child, those that are listening and let's see. The child, Baruch Hashem, turns out to be, we get the help that we need, and it works out. Baruch Hashem. Obviously, it takes some time, but then eventually there is growth, and you see potential and you see result. Some parents feel like, if they don't have that relationship, or if they hear that the school is saying, let's work together, they take it as a threat. Oh, the school is labeling and the school is saying this right away. It's very important. It's a perception is so important, because sometimes the perception could be the parent misunderstands the school. Obviously, we as a school have to be very careful the way we present ourselves. It's very important for us to present ourselves in a professional manner, and we're not here to attack. We're not here to label. We're here to help. And this is, again, a shift in the mind. The child has to understand, the parent and the school has to understand we're all partners. So once we're here to help and the parents are on board, we're able to have a relationship, and the parents will know that we're here because we care about the child. If there's no relationship, no matter what the school is going to do, the parent is always going to feel like we're out to get them. So that's number one. I think the relationship is very, very important, and we as a school have reached out to parents in the beginning and saw some potential problem that can come up, and we helped students tremendously, and it worked.
So I'll give you an example. Comes PTA, and the teacher says to the parent, your child has been failing in these areas, your child doesn't really finish their homework, the child is not doing well on the test. And then the parent says, well, where were you 3 months? Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't I know about this, right? So who starts this relationship? Is it the school reaching out first, trying to develop something? Do you wait for the parents to reach out?
That's a very, very good question again. And the answer is, I try my best to train the teachers that the first thing during our professional development, which is in the summertime, I tell the teachers, call the parents. You have to introduce yourself. You have to build a relationship. You have to know who your partners are. You're not going into this partnership without knowing who your partners are. So I even reach out to the teachers like a week later to know, did you speak to the parents? Did you reach out to them? So yes, we try our best to reach out to the parents in the beginning to try to build that relationship. There are those parents, Baruch Hashem, the ones that come to the PTA are the ones that really don't need their child, like don't need to
so
see it. You know what I mean? Usually the ones that have their child, Baruch Hashem, doing what he's supposed to do, they're the ones that come to the PTA. But there are those that are very proactive and they reach out in the beginning. They want to meet the teachers. As a matter of fact, in the school we have a meet the parent night or meet the teacher night. This is before the PTA in the beginning of the year. This is like the first week of school. They come in, and the reason for that is that we should be able to have, establish a relationship. That's what we do. And I'll tell you something, it is those parents that come, it's very positive. Again, we're not here, Chashon, pointing fingers. Unfortunately, we're in a situation where everybody's busy. Everybody's busy, everybody's working, everybody's trying to, build themselves up, build their family up, and everybody's trying to do good. But we have to, our value system is very important to be able to properly set our value system where what is important to us. If our children are important to us, then I'll drop everything and I will come to the PTA. I'll drop everything and I will, and I'll come to the meet the teacher night so that I'll be able to establish a relationship. I remember as a teacher, I was always thinking of a way, how do I get the parents to come to PTA? I remember as a teacher, I would always ask myself, like, how do I get the parents to come to PTA? Because I know what happens. Parents are busy. So I decided I told the students, I said, we're having an amazing surprise. Tell your father and mother that there's going to be a raffle, a great raffle your parents are not going to want to miss. And the kids go for a week. Abba, Ima, you have to come to the PTA. There's some big surprise that's happening. And obviously, Baruch Hashem, we did a surprise. We had a nice raffle. We had a beautiful, nice. And actually, we had a very nice turnout. But what was the purpose of that? Because I wanted the parents to be involved. I wanted the parents to see what we're doing. And those parents that were involved, because we did that in the beginning of the year, and we got most parents to come, Baruch Hashem, we were able to establish a relationship. So obviously for an educator, it's very important to try to do that. If you're a good educator, you build relationship with your parents. And when you do that, the parent knows that, hey, this teacher is a good teacher, is a good Rebbe, he cares about my child. And if he says something, I trust the Rebbe more than the child. Now, obviously, if the child repeats the same complaint to the parent, then the parent has to be smart and realize that something's going on. If the child is repeating itself, let me find out. The parent has to know how to balance that also. You don't want to be that parent that always calls to complain, People think that, if I call and complain, I have the right to, he's my child, and I will get my result. It's not always that way. You're actually sometimes making it worse for your child than better.
Tell me about that.
Well, imagine you have let me give you an example. If you have a client that constantly calls you, and he complains, what happens naturally?
Well, that's a very good point, because sometimes we have that where a client feels like they get the support from the therapist and they will text, right? But those are some boundaries that we set from the beginning. Yeah. That we meet once a week and this is what's expected unless there's a crisis situation.
Beautiful. But when you're running a school and when you're dealing with the most precious individual or more precious thing, I don't want to say thing, to the parent, which is a child, a parent has the right and wants to know what's going on with the child. And sometimes, even if you will put those guidelines and everything, a parent still will come through and want to still know and break those boundaries sometimes because he feels or she feels that she has the right to, and I totally understand that. But sometimes it's not so good for the child because and right now I'm speaking not from the educator aspect of it. I'm speaking as a parent because sometimes I think I'm doing justice for my child. I am actually making it worse for my child because it could be that because I'm doing that, I'm causing the administration to feel like kind of like it's like a crying wolf. Crying wolf, or when I'm constantly like nagging and bugging, so you become that parent that just complains in the mind of administration. Like, they just complain, and automatically when there are going to be real complaints, you're not going to be able to get through the school because if you're like, you'll get neglected because if you're like, that's the parent that always knows, he probably doesn't. So it's very important to be able to know how to juggle. As a parent, it's very important to be able to be a parent and know when I could come in, complain, and when I have to know how to let go.
Two pointers come up for me. First of all is, where do you think that comes from? Where do you think why do you think that parent feels the need to constantly check in and constantly ask and constantly make sure everything's okay?
Okay, listen, I'm not a prophet or son of a prophet. But it has to do with the upbringing that the parent, again, my humble opinion, it has to do with the upbringing that the parent himself had or herself had. there are certain parents that are like helicopter parents. They want to be involved in everything. They want to make sure that the child is not going to get in trouble, not even feel uncomfortable. They want to be that, carpet for the child to walk on. And once we had a parent, it's interesting. The child forgot his, the father brought the child home at school, and he went home. That's it. The child went to school, class started. All of a sudden, half hour later, the father comes back with a snack bag, with a lunch bag. And I'm like, hi, Shalom Aleichem, what are you doing? Oh, my child forgot his food. I want to make sure that he... So yeah, from the father's perspective, he thinks he did an amazing thing. He's an amazing father. And bravo, he is. And I would understand so, But in a way, I was thinking about it, like, what are we teaching our child? Like, if we take ourselves away for a second. Let's take our emotion away. Let's think about the child himself. What am I teaching the child? It's not about me. It's not about what I feel. It's about what the child has to learn. My humble opinion is that the child has to learn what it feels like to forget lunch. And eventually, it might sound harsh. I'm generally not. But he has to know the consequence of, hey, if I'm not responsible and I will forget lunch, I will not have lunch that day. And that's called training session. This is how he learns how to grow up. This is how he learns to be mature. This is how he learns to be independent. But if every time the child is in trouble, and here I am, I'm there for him, I'm bringing him lunch. So yeah, I feel good. I brought him lunch and now he's not going to be hungry. That means what I'm actually doing is I'm making this child feel that I could never be, in a way, we're teaching a child to be spoiled, because now he will feel like, and when he will, chas v'shalom, God forbid, get in trouble, he won't be able to handle it because he never went through something like that. So it's interesting. You see different type of parents, and those parents, I think, again, it has to do with upbringing, maybe nature versus nurture. How they themselves were brought up, and naturally you will bring up your children the way you were brought up yourself, unless you work on yourself and you try to say, so I'm not going to raise my child this way. I'm not going to. So we as educators and as parents have to see, like, what would be the ripple effect of my behavior if I'm doing this. What will happen? So.
When you were speaking about the lunch piece, I also want to just mention a disclaimer, because people might say, oh, what do you mean the child is not going to have lunch? He's going to be hungry. How is he going to learn? So I do want to mention a piece here. First of all, I know for sure that the school would give him a peanut butter sandwich. Right. Yeah, so we just want to clarify that and get that out of the way. But what you're saying here is actually teaching responsibility. Because there was actually a child who would constantly forget their lunch, and the parents would end up Uber Eats, sending something with Uber Eats, or making accommodations, or ordering in food. And the parent actually had to stop doing that in order to help the child build responsibility. And you know what? After it happened a couple of times, and the child didn't have their snack, they ended up bringing it with them, or losing their water bottle, or losing their coat, or losing their favorite hat. This happens a lot, where kids forget things or lose things, and this is a stage where they build character. I also just want to mention, we're talking in general terms. Obviously, there's specific situations which are specific for that specific person.
Absolutely.
Now, dealing with teachers who sometimes, let's say teachers yell, right, in class. And it's really tough to work with a child who you agree with, to say, you know what, you're right, the teacher should not yell, right? But also to remember, and I say this with a lot of sensitivity, that teachers in the end of the day are humans too. And sometimes teachers can make mistakes. And having that conversation with a child, I remember it was 8th grade graduation, and I was an 8th grade teacher, and I had to give the end of the year speech. And at the end of my speech, I actually apologized to my class, and I said, I'm so sorry if I did or said something to hurt you. And somebody came over to me and said, why are you apologizing? You don't need to apologize. You're a teacher. And it was interesting, because that person was actually an educator also. And that stayed with me. Like, there are some people who have this higher sense of self that I'm better than you just because I'm a teacher, right? But actually, when we level with our students, even though, yes, there's some form of respect there, but it's a sign of showing, I see you. And you can open up and you can share with whatever is going on to be able to develop that sense of connection. And based on a lot of the feedback that I hear from parents and a lot of the stuff that you shared today, is we want to start going away from that formal, structured box type of thinking, where it's time for us to think out of the box and have that human to human connection. Because it's not, I think, and I want to hear a little bit more from you, it's not just about academics. It's so much more than that.
100%. It's a beautiful thing to discuss. I want to tell you that obviously the generation has, changed a lot as well. We can't compare 20 years ago, 30, 50 years ago to now. It's different for various reasons. And people became a little more sensitive than they used to be. I think, obviously, whatever the reasons are, I don't want to get into it, but that's point number one. Point number two I want to make is that I think the Rambam brings down that just as we have to respect an adult and our parent, it's very important for an adult to respect the child as well. We want our children, sometimes you're right, a parent or an educator feels like I'm the Rebbe or I'm the teacher. You have to listen to me. Yes, obviously there is an important aspect of it. There has to be a kavod. You have to respect your Rebbe, you have to respect your teacher. Obviously this is like a 2.0, like they say. This is like
basic,
a given. This
right.
is basic, what's name? This is the ABC of education. But nevertheless, it's very important for the educator to be able to respect the student as well. And I see it like it's so evident. It's like, again, this is like one of the things that I would tell you, like it's not a theory, it's a fact. Because I see, I every time, this is something I try to develop as an educator, I try to develop a relationship with a student. And they perceive me so much, they respect me so much more when I respect them. I'm not doing it because I want the respect. I sincerely love the student. I love the nishah. I try to look beyond the
what
scope
you see
of
in front of you.
Yeah, I see the neshama. I say, what a special child. What you see the best in that child. You say, wow. Even you have all these nonsense that the child goes. Oh, everybody has their negative, but you see the positive, and you give the respect, and the child feels that he respects you immensely, tremendously. So, and obviously that our educators of today are understanding that. Because they see such a big drastic change in the generation today, our educators are also in sync and we are training them to be more sensitive to our students, to respect them, to understand, not like yelling. Almost never, I would say, in our school we have, again, I don't want to say never, so almost never do I hear a teacher yelling, from top of, sometimes a teacher has to, show that he's serious and he means business and elevate his voice, obviously, sometimes, just to show that he means business. But again, if a child feels that it comes from anger, then the child will not listen to you. He'll think you're a fool. A child feels if a teacher is sincere or real or not. Or a child also feels if a teacher is angry, it's coming from anger or it's coming from the right place. And if it's coming from anger, he will look at a teacher as a fool. He'll not listen to him, and he'll probably listen to him because he's just a child. He doesn't want to get in trouble. But deep down, he thinks he's a fool. It is very, very important for our educators to understand the need to respect their children. This might be a very, I'm opening up a can of worms right now. Respecting children. When I say respect, doesn't mean you have to bow down to them and you have to stand up for them. It means you have to respect the human. Understand he's a human. Just because he's a little child, it does not mean that I could trample him and I could step on him. No, I have to respect him.
Regardless of age.
And you know, and again, and you see that when you do respect him, you have no idea how he looks at it and how he takes it and how much he's able to respect you and back and do much more for you than you would do for him, because he realizes that you appreciate him and you view him as a human being. So that's number one. So obviously what we do is, this is something that, again, professional development in the summertime, we sit and we discuss, we talk about it, the importance of not yelling, not elevating your voice. And if we do have a situation like that, and I see that the teacher is not right, it is a very hard thing for me to close my mouth and not say anything. It is hard because I have to show the student that I do respect the teacher, and that the student has to know that he's a teacher, he's a Rebbe, and I have to respect him. So a lot of times most of the time, I will not say anything. I will kind of show the student that I'll give him a hug later on, and I'll talk to him, and I'll take him to my office, we'll discuss, and I'll hear him, and I will cry with him, and I'll try my best to, sympathize with him. I will still explain to him where the teacher is coming from, to understand the teacher so he doesn't think that he's a fool. And the truth is, the teachers are not fools, like they're human, right? And therefore I will explain to the child, this is where the teacher is coming from, to be able to kind of like make a cushion for him to understand that, oh, you know what, so it makes it a little easier. But I will definitely meet with that teacher, and I will tell him, the way you approach the situation, I'm sorry, this is, so you will have those individuals that are actually going to take a step back and reflect, and they'll say, I have an individual that I know of that sometimes can act like that. But then after a nice conversation, and having a relationship with teachers is also important. When you have a relationship with a teacher, they're able to perceive you and understand where you come from as well. So I speak to him, and he reflects, and then he calls me. He could be older than me, but he calls me, you were right, I'm so sorry. He went home and he would ask his wife, what do you think about this, or his daughter? And they say, I think the principal is right. And he would call me and say, I apologize, you're right. And he's such a tzaddik. He would come to the student and apologize to the student for not respecting him. Obviously, this is not something that's required, but he would be like, sincere, I apologize. I was, and the student knows that you could be an adult, but you could also make a mistake. You're human. So we do have situations like that, and we speak to our staff. And Baruch Hashem, more or less, we did have a situation a couple of years ago where a teacher would just like scream and yell, We warned the teacher, and we said, you can't speak like that. So it was okay. She took the warning, and she stopped for a week or so, but then started again. So obviously, there was something going on at home, I guess. We, spoke a few times. Eventually, we realized that we can't, we had to let the teacher go. You can't, you can't be teaching this way. You can't be,
So I'm glad that we're talking about this. We're bringing a sense of awareness to it. It's not like you're oblivious to the fact that you don't know what's going on. And I'm not talking about your specific school. I'm making a general statement because, 100%. By the way, this is something that happens in many schools. You have, based on what you said in the beginning, you're dealing with so many personalities. And a degree, in all honesty, a degree is just a degree. The personality, the person behind that degree is what holds so much more weight.
100%.
The hot topic, which was very much requested from parents, and actually this is something personal for me because this is something I see a lot as a clinician, is issues with tests and homework. The clients that I see, a lot of children suffer from anxiety because of it, and can actually lead to depression and not wanting to come to school and be associated with school. So can you share something about your thoughts on homework and tests in school?
Yeah, very powerful topics to speak about. So I will tell you, it's like a sword with like a double-edged sword, because you come across a situation where you don't want to give homework because you feel, you understand that the kids have a long day and they're sitting in class and there's so much that they have to absorb throughout the day. You want them to go home and just take it easy, because part of, we have a concept called bitula zehu kiyuma. Sometimes when you have a little bit time off, it is actually a recharge for you to be able to come back strong the next day. And we're human. We need that time to just unwind. We as adults, I need time to unwind. Unfortunately, very hard. I don't have the time, and I tried to find, and I realized that I need it as I'm getting older. I realize I need time to unwind. So the child, even more so, needs the time to unwind. He's a little child who's like absorbing this world that's coming to him in as a speeding bullet. Like, well, so much, so many subjects and so many things, so much information, so many teachers, so many different approaches, so many rules and guidelines and everything. So child needs to unwind. So I would understand why homework would not be, I do understand. Especially it makes it harder when you have a parent that doesn't even know what to do with the child. Let's say he doesn't read the language or doesn't understand what the child's learning. So it makes it harder because the parent, once again, wants to help his child, especially a frustrated child. And you get more frustrated when you yourself don't even know how to help your child. So I would understand that. Nevertheless, you have those parents when you don't give homework. You have parents, if you don't have to give homework, you're not a good teacher. This school is not a good school because some people still have that maybe different way of thinking where if there's homework, it's a good school. No homework, not a good school. So that's the balance. Sometimes you feel like you need. Sometimes you feel like you don't. If you give homework, you are perceived as an individual that doesn't care about the child. You want to understand the child. If you don't give homework, if you're perceived as a school that doesn't, also it's not a good school. That means no homework. People perceive that the school is a good school if there's homework or not. So I believe, my humble opinion, child has to have something in the middle. There has to be some sort of maybe a review, a light review, a light homework that is more like just to have something, something to reflect on throughout the day, what you had, little here and there, a quiz, a review that does not put pressure on the child. Does not. I'm going to repeat myself. That does not put pressure on the child because that's not the goal.
Just curious, how do you measure that?
How do you measure
if it does put pressure or doesn't? So,
if it's a review, more or less, of everything you learned about, and especially if the review is going to be like a think sheet, more like a multiple choice, or read something, just read or listen to something, and that's all, or just read over what you learned in class, or record yourself for 10 minutes of what you learned. Just record. We learned 5 psukim today. Just record yourself. Use the translation sheet that you use. Not something that a child has to use as critical thinking skills. It's more like things that, like you could just review over something that is very light. That is,
And then about tests.
So when it comes to homework, again, I will just go back to that. If it's light and review, there's nothing wrong with it. Especially, we live in a time where there's so much. People love gaming today. We live in the world of gaming. People could spend hours on like social media and hours on watching something, and which is also it's not good. It's not good. And whoever will tell you that it's good, all the educators will agree that spending a lot of time on it is not good. And unfortunately, when we have parents that are busy working and you have all these gadgets and you have so much time, how do you fill in the time, So unfortunately, you'll have parents, or you'll have some kids that come home and they have devices and they sit on it for hours. And let me tell you something, it affects the child immensely in school. Again, this is not a theory. I see it as a fact. I see students that are on the gadgets. They're not the same students that are less on the gadgets. Completely, you see the way they behave. You see everything in the school. So in a way, you have to balance. You have to have a little review, and you have to have something that the child is going to be busy with. So obviously, you don't want to, just because you want to keep the child busy, so therefore let me give him homework now. No, that's also not. And that's one thing I will tell you. That's a no-no. If a teacher or a parent requests homework because he wants to keep his child busy, that's a no-no. It has to be a constructive reason to give homework. If I'm giving homework, either it has to be light homework, It has to be a short period of time. It has to be where if I am giving something, I have to check the homework afterwards.
Oh, that's such an important piece.
Yes. You can't be a person that just gives homework, because then it becomes like, first of all, then it goes back to what we spoke about. It shows disrespect to the child, because what are you doing? Like, what's our purpose here? What's the goal? You just want to keep the child busy? What does the child feel like? He feels like, that's exactly what he feels like. You want to make me busy? A smart kid especially feel like, what do you want from me? You're torturing me. So if you're torturing me, you don't respect me. I don't respect you. But if a child feels like it's a review, it's not a torture. It's a little, or I will be checking afterwards just to see how you did, just to reflect on if you understand the material or not, so I can be a better educator to see where you are, where there are gaps, so I could fill in. And I check it, then it becomes constructive. There's a reason to homework. So then I would definitely agree with homework. But also I will say, I think it's important that Baruch Hashem, in our school, we implemented after-school programs. We have chess, we have soccer, we have basketball after school. We actually have Chazanut program starting soon after school, where I myself took the responsibility twice a week to teach Chazanut to the boys. I love singing, and I would like to implement it in the school as well. We have Chazanut in school as well during the school hours, but I'm talking about after school also. More like choir, more singing, Bezrat Hashem, and
as an extracurricular.
And Baruch Hashem, there are a lot of parents that are very open to the idea, and they actually keep their kids a little longer.
Do you see children succeeding more in class because they have an outlet like this?
Absolutely. It's they're happier. They have it's teaching them skills. It's teaching them to feel good about themselves, right? Again, obviously, every child is different, and some kids are sporty, some kids are not. Some kids are not. You don't want to put a child that's not sporty into sports, so you have to know. And sometimes kids could be very good in chess, and you don't want, so to put them on the other way around. Sometimes you want to take a child. That's right, correct. You want to take a student that will be amazing in sports, and you don't want to give them the sport. You just want to put them in chess. That's also like you have to know how to
find their strength.
Correct.
So I want to talk about the tests, but also one piece about the electronics, because many parents have a very hard time. It's a fight in their home every day about electronics and limiting electronics. So I know you also have a parenting course, and we're going to talk about it as we end this podcast. We're going to talk about how people can get more involved in it. Is there a tip or a strategy you can share with parents who have a hard time with electronics in their home, how to limit it, how to help their kids do other things, what strategies they can use?
So, yes. So let me go back to the tests, and then I'll answer. So regarding tests, the same thing. I like it to be, first of all, let me take a step back for a second, and I'll tell you that when it comes to tests, different students perceive tests different ways, and different students need a different type of a test. Again, I'm speaking from my experience. Obviously, some people have different experience, but I had a student who I would ask him a question orally. He would look at me and he would not know what I'm talking about, like completely like dumbfounded. And as a matter of fact, unfortunately, some teachers thought he's just not a smart boy. I gave him the same question written. He answered me flawlessly, beautifully. So I realized this boy is he can't take oral tests. He gets nervous and he forgets. And Be'emet, he would sweat and he would be so nervous. All the information, I reflect a lot about how I was. Like, I did not like tests. Not only didn't like it, it would put a lot of pressure. It will put a lot of strain. And then I'm thinking to myself, like, what's the purpose of a test? Is the purpose of a test to test you? And then what happens to you? Like, what happens to a person that takes a test? You study, you take a test. A week later, you forget. So what's the purpose of a test? Unless there's review. I understand if there's review, but if there's a test, you study for it. So what's the purpose? We always have to know what is the purpose of a test. I like to call it review. And a lot of times when I give a test, it's always a review. As a matter of fact, I let my students do their test. We review it together, and I tell them, boys, I teach 8th grade girls right now for 45 minutes, halacha. I teach them, and I said, let's do it together. We're going to first review the questions that are going to be on the test, and this is going to be the test. Because, and guess what? They know the stuff.
No tricks.
Because what's the purpose? The purpose is that you want them to know the stuff. So who cares if I test them or we review it together, and the same questions are going to be on the test, right? So obviously, again, depends on what you want also. What is your result? What are you looking for when you want to test? If you want, there's different. I could talk about it for hours, which I don't think this is time. But I'm just saying it depends on what your purpose in test is also. If your purpose is just for the student to know the material, my personal opinion is that you should review it with them, and it should be a review, not a test. Mm-hmm. But obviously, if you want the student to challenge the student a little bit, and you feel like he's capable of doing it, he's actually going to excel. If he's going to, some children are tough; they have tough skin, so they're actually going to grow from this test. So maybe So I don't want to give it like a blank statement or like this is it.
You're teaching to the individual.
Yeah, it's individual.
So going to electronics.
When it comes to electronics, it has to do with a bigger problem. You know what I mean? What I think is that it has to do with a parent being a parent in the house, which means I feel that if a parent has a good system, a discipline system in the house, it's not only electronics. Electronics is just a little piece of it. If a parent has a very good system in the house where there are boundaries, set boundaries, limited boundaries, and the children know that, then I personally, obviously you have to have, when you say electronics is a very big word today. I mean, you're open to, so much. You're open to the entire world. I feel, let's speak about the topic for a minute of electronics in general, what it has, especially let's say smartphone, smart device that's not protected, and parents get that for a child that's in 6th grade, 5th grade. I personally am thinking to myself, like, would they give a loaded gun to their child while he's in 5th grade? Thinking like my child needs to protect himself, unless they live in a place where it's you have to I don't want to mention places, but unless they live in a dangerous place and they need something like that, and obviously it's going to come with a lot of training, with a lot of courses, but for some reason we perceive a smartphone that's not protected. We feel like, okay, my child knows, he knows that how do we can't trust ourselves as adults, so how do we trust it to a child? So, number one, if a parent does decide to get a smartphone, a parent has to know, in my personal opinion, that he's putting himself and putting his child in danger, especially if it's a smartphone that's not protected. It has nothing to do with being Jewish or not being Jewish. Even the Gentiles realize that there's so much schmutz that's out there that could ruin the child forever. And it's very hard to erase and very hard to take away, especially if you want to grow and you want to become a person that's spiritual and closer to God. And it's very hard. You can't really erase. So if a parent is giving something to a child that's not protected, I think it's like giving a gun that's loaded.
But in a realistic way, because in a perfect world, white or black, no electronics, that would be great.
I didn't say that.
But, right.
See, that's why I was very careful. I didn't say no electronics.
So how do we...
I said you give electronics. If you decide that that's what you feel like my child should have electronics, I'm saying give it, but it has to be protected. There has to be a certain, I would say, boundaries. There has to be a certain level of boundary. You could have it, but there has to be boundaries. And if there are no boundaries, you're setting up yourself for failure. So same thing with gadgets, smart devices and whatever you said, iPads and whatever. It comes to this point where if you have a very good system at home, discipline system at home, you could implement the same system with a gadget. For example, if I'm not gonna say, like, sometimes I would put a video for my children, a Jewish nice video, but I limit. I say, how much do you think you need? He tells me I need an hour, so I cut it to a half hour, 45 minutes. 45 minutes, and it has to be once a week. 45 minutes, okay, it's fine. And I personally feel maybe perhaps they need it. Sometimes maybe it could be an outlet. I hear. But again, I know that it's with my permission and it's with my guidelines and everything, and I know that it's going to be safe. But if you're just giving a device to a child because you just want him to be quiet, and here, a new babysitter, and it does a good job as being a babysitter. You could put it on for hours, and the kids are going to be just in it. So then, again, there are fallouts. There are shortcomings. There are difficult things that happen.
Price to pay.
Price to pay, 100%.
I feel like...
So the answer would be there has to be guidelines to that as well. Just like you're not going to let your kid play with fire, the guidelines, how do you do it? Do it this way. Let me train you, and it has to be like this. And if you put proper guidelines, I think there is a way and how you're able to have it and live with it.
I think today we just scratched the surface of this entire topic because there's so much to share, and this is a whole series, I should say. And I think it's such a wonderful thing that you are creating this chinuch. Well, would you call it like a parenting course?
Yeah, it's more of awareness.
Awareness
to parenting. And again, the goal over here is if we have a triangle, a perfect triangle, right, by having the parent be aware, the more you're aware to anything, the more awareness you have, the more you will not, like if a person wants to be healthy. How does he, just to say to himself, okay, from now on, I'll be healthy and I won't eat, not healthy food. It's not, what's going to happen is for a day or a week, he'll probably hold himself and eventually break because he doesn't understand what what it means to be healthy, what it means to be unhealthy, and all the foods that will make him healthy or unhealthy. If he studies it and he learns it and he's aware, he has awareness, then it's going to be easier. The process is going to be easier. Like he's not going to want it.
Right. With that said, it's actually always very difficult. It's hard to, even with everything we know, to do it. Even sometimes the best educators and the best therapists and the best rabbis also struggle. And that's okay. That's what makes us human.
100%. Yeah, 100%. The point is, the more awareness there is, the better you'll be. Does that mean that you're going to be perfect? No, we're not here to become perfect. Right. But awareness, the more awareness there is. So I personally decided that, again, because we see that a lot of times that, personally, I think that our job especially today in our generation, our job is, as educators, is not only to educate and to help our students, it is also our duty, if we can, to help our parents as well. And once again, to be partners. If we want to be partners, we have to be on the same page. And if we want to be on the same page, we want to be able to educate the parents, especially if we are called so-called educators. We have to be able to show awareness of what it means to educate, what it means to be on the same page, what it means to be a parent, what it means to be a mechanech. So I think I decided, again, I want to be a better parent myself, so I decided maybe if I have someone to speak to, I will become a better parent myself. And Baruch Hashem, about a month and a half ago, we had the first lecture.
I heard it, by the way. It was incredible. For those who haven't heard it yet, how can they can also email you, right? The email is thecenterofattention613@gmail.com, which we're going to talk about. And also, they can get the previous video. Yeah. How can they find it on YouTube somewhere?
It is, yeah.
It is on YouTube.
Yeah.
Okay, you guys can check it out. And the future episodes are going to be talking about different nuances in terms of parenting, communication. I heard it. It was brilliant. And what I loved about it is that you're the human-to-human connection. And I find that so refreshing. It wasn't like a lecture. It was more about, hey, we're in this together. Happens to be I'm a rabbi, happens to be I've been in the education field for so many years, happens to be I'm a principal and a teacher, and we're in this together. It's like such a refreshing way of connecting to an educator. I want to play something with you, and we'll end on that. So this is an interesting ball. I throw this ball to you. You catch the ball. This is a little bit more personal. So I throw the ball to you. You catch the ball. Wherever your thumb lands on, that's the question you read, and if you can answer it, if you're comfortable. Are you ready?
Before we go to that, I first want to say thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to you today and share my thoughts. Once again, I will say it again. These are my thoughts, my personal thoughts. And also the lecture that I'm giving, it's not my words, it's the words of our Chachamim, our sages. And my job is just to be a messenger, to be able to enhance and enlighten people if I'm able to.
How can just want to mention, if someone wants to see because I know it's a series, you're starting a series of these parenting courses. I know you call them chinuch courses, and there's a lot of depth to that. I feel like this is just part one, because there's so much that we can talk about. And I know after this, you're actually going to another class. So how can they get in touch? Through email?
Email is the...
Okay, email. Once again, the Center of Attention 613@gmail.com. If you guys want to join, whether it's couples classes, parenting classes, anything to do with life, this is the person you want to talk with, because I know you're also a rabbi of a community, and you have a lot of experience working with different personalities in different circumstances. So this was such a treat for me, such a treat to be able to learn from you and really be inspired. You definitely don't have it easy. You have a big load on your shoulders, that's for sure, because being able to navigate this with such a precise way, it takes so much skill. And I love what you said about being a conductor. Sometimes you just have to focus on what's happening in the game, which is the students, the teachers. That is your world. And unfortunately, sometimes not everybody will get everything. But the fact that you have, it almost sounds like you have like an open door policy, where you also leave some room to hear the parent out. And it's not my way or the highway, but it's like, hey, we're in this together.
100%.
So are you ready?
Let's try.
Okay, here you go. Speaking of mic.
This one?
What does it say?
Who can you talk to?
Oh my God, this is perfect for you. This is so perfect.
Who can I talk to? That's a very good question, but in terms of what?
Can I share?
Sure.
As a therapist, it is required and very important for us to either be in therapy or have a supervisor who's like overlooking our, even after college, after our degrees, after all of that, even if we have our own private practice, we need to be in therapy. We need to be making sure someone is checking our work. So when you struggle, and I am sure there are times where you have situations where you're like, what do I do? Who do you talk to? Besides your wife, of course.
Yeah. So it's a good question. Thank God I'm obviously we all need more, but thank God I have friends that are in this field as well. Close friends that are like very, very dear to me. And, I open up to them. I have two people that one male, one female, who work with me in the school, and they are very close to the point where, and I mean close to the point where they understand the surrounding, the situation, the parents. They're in it together, and we speak to each other.
Peer support.
Correct. So when I have my, I speak to them, and whenever they have theirs, and they speak to me, and I find it very helpful. That's one. I also have a coach. I have a coach who his name is Ray. Whom I respect a lot, much, much older than me, has many years of experience. He was a school leader, and he has his PhD in education. Very, very wise and smart man, and I speak to him when it comes to school. I have a Rebbe who I speak to. Few Rebbeim, depends on which area. There's two type of Rebbeim. There's the Rebbeim who has hierarchy, who needs more difficult questions, much more difficult questions, which I need an older person for that. And then I have somebody younger but also understands me, and I come to him as well. So it depends on what question to who I could address, but I have my,
Yeah.
my people that I.
Thanks for sharing that. It takes some vulnerability to actually say I have someone who I reach out to for help, because that
Absolutely.
makes you so human.
100%. I think without it that you can't go. You can't.
Right.
You have to have a way of communicating with others and just unloading with all the load that you come
Yeah.
with. Hashem.
Thank you so much. This has been amazing, and we have to do a part 2, because I feel like this is just the tip of the iceberg. There is so much. I mean, I prepared a lot, and we only covered like a few areas. I want to just wish you a lot of strength in this field.
Thank you so much.
And the education field is very lucky to have you. That's for sure.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It means a lot to me, and I am proud of you. Myself, you've come a long way, and you work very hard, and the awareness you give to people and the education that you give. I'm happy to call you my cousin.
All right.
Runs in the blood, runs in
Look
the
at
family.
that.
Thank God, Baruch
Cheers.
Hashem, and hopefully
Cheers to
we'll do
that.
this again.
Of course. All right.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much. This was. You are a master. I'm serious. I didn't even